Okay, and one other just kind of notification for you to know, we do record sessions, so that way, if something happens and you lose service, you drop out, you can come back and you can rewatch it. And Miss Rush will have access to all of those if your teacher needs them or anything like that. And of course, you are welcome to unmute as we move through this. You're welcome to post in the chat as well, but we will have answer options in the Pear Deck too. If you have questions, either one of us, happy to answer you. Okay. Give everybody a few more seconds to get in the Pear Deck. Now, I'm not even gonna lie, I'm straight up impressed. Like 4 o'clock on a school day, I want to go home. It's great that y'all are knocking this out early in the week. I'll give you another few seconds to join the Pear Deck. And remember, if you don't join the Pear Deck, you don't get your takeaway. I know some teachers are requiring that you submit the takeaway, and this, for some of you, is a test grade. So make sure that you've joined the Pear Deck or you don't get that. Okay, it is 4:02, so we're going to go ahead and get started so we get done right on time. The Pear Deck code will, of course, stay in the top right-hand corner of the screen, and it's just joinpd.com. I believe Ms. Weller will put that in the chat shortly. Okay, so looks like most everybody has talked about inflation. Yeah, so this will be review. Okay, we've got a few people still responding. All right, now I love the initiative with the definitions, but this is just have you covered it and what school you attend. Okay. Yeah, it looks like we will be reviewing. So if I move too fast, if I need to slow down, let me know. But I don't want to hold you after, about 5:10, 5:15. If you have a question, just let us know and we're going to go ahead and start. All right, some of you have probably talked about this in class. I use it every year because it's very interesting and it has changed in the past few years. All right, I want you to tell me, what is the highest grossing movie of all time? Okay, so what movie has made the most money? And it looks like some of your teachers use this in class too. Oh, I see some Top Gun. Yeah, my students thought that too. It did upset the top, I think 15, but it didn't quite make it to number 1. Okay. Okay, we've got a few people still answering, but looks like most of you have talked about this. Okay, it is actually Avatar. And my students didn't believe me when I told them, but it's because they re-released it. I think it was the end of last year, getting ready for Avatar 2. I don't know about y'all. I'm extremely excited about that. It comes out, I think, December 20th, and I will go see it in the movie theater. Okay, so the issue was just saying, what is the highest grossing movie, is that those values aren't adjusted for inflation. If we just take ticket price and multiply it by the tickets sold, movies are a lot more expensive today than they were in like the 40s. Okay. So yeah, those movies have made a lot of money, but if we consider inflation, that inflation has happened, Gone with the Wind is actually the highest grossing movie. So if we adjust all those ticket prices to a base year, Gone with the Wind has made more money than any other movie. And of course, that was re-released a couple of times as well. And, we had war during that time. So people were going to the movies because they needed something to brighten their day. Okay. So I know most of you got that right. And who knows, Avatar may be overtaken by Avatar 2. I guess we will see at the end of the year. Okay. All right. So let's talk about some key terms. And again, I know this is mostly a review. If I need to slow down, just stop me. So inflation is just a general rise in price level over time, and it reduces your purchasing power. Okay. So what that means is your dollar today is not going to buy the same as your dollar a year ago did. Okay. Now, whenever we talk about inflation on the test, if we're talking about the value of dollars, we can't say they're worth less. Okay. We have to say purchasing power has decreased. Okay. If you say worth less, you're probably not going to get that point because the dollar is still worth $1. It just doesn't buy as much stuff. Okay. Now, deflation is the exact opposite. It's a general fall in the price level over time. And the way I think of inflation and deflation is inflation, if we're inflating a balloon, we're putting more money into the economy, okay, we're inflating the dollar. All right, deflation, we're letting air out of the balloon, we're pulling money out of the economy, which is raising the value of our dollar. Okay, and that will make more sense once you get to Unit 4 if you are not there yet. Okay, nominal values are just not adjusted. Okay, and the way that I like to refer to nominal values is it's the now. Okay, it is the current prices, it's what you actually see like on your paycheck. Okay, real is whenever we adjust for those price changes. So real is what you get. Nominal is what's on your paycheck. The real is what you can actually buy with that money. Okay. And right now, unless you are getting raises constantly, the real value of all of your dollars is falling with the current inflation rate. Okay. So I'm not saying go ask your boss for a raise. My students did that and it didn't end well for some of them though. Okay. All right. Now, calculating inflation. Hopefully you feel pretty confident about the price index. We're not going to really talk about that much today. If you still have questions at the end of the session, of course, we'll stay on and answer anything you have to ask, but we won't go in depth during the session. Okay. So the price index is what we use to measure our prices in our economy. Now, we always set a base year, and right now it's like 82 to 84. And that price index for that year is always 100. Okay, so we're normalizing everything to that year. The most common price index that we use in the United States to measure inflation is the Consumer Price Index. You will also see that called the CPI. Okay, and what we do, we poll households and we give them this little book and we have them record everything that they buy each week for every day of the week. And then they turn that in and we give them another booklet and then they track for another week. Okay. And then we take the average of what everybody buys. So we figure out the most commonly bought things and we figure out how much the price has changed using that price index. Okay. And then once we have our price index, we can calculate our inflation rate. Okay. And that formula should look pretty familiar to you. It's just the percent change formula. Okay, so it's your new minus your old divided by old times 100. Okay, and my students sometimes struggle with that new minus old. So I use like year 2 minus year 1 divided by year 1 times 100, where year 2 or your new is what they're asking for the inflation rate, like what year they're asking for that inflation rate of. Okay, any questions there? Okay. And I do want to take this chance to remind you that we don't get a formula sheet. Okay, so you have to memorize all of these formulas. And I know it seems like a lot, but you have time. Okay. And I know like I quiz my kids every week on the formulas. So maybe you need to make a Quizlet or a Kahoot that you can play constantly over the next couple of months, because we're only like 6 months from the exam. Okay. You do get calculators this year, basic 4-function calculators, but we were assured that you would still be able to do the math without the calculator. It's just a backup. Okay. All right. So let's look at a multiple choice question. So we're going to use this price index to calculate inflation between these 2 years. So the CPI rises from 100 to 200. Okay, and what can we conclude from that information? Okay, make sure you're using that formula, and don't try to do it in your head. If you're not sure about it, go on ahead and get a piece of scratch paper. Okay, looks like our answers are starting to kind of level out. Okay, the correct answer on this is C, but I want to walk through each option and kind of go over like, why is it not right? Okay, so A says each person's real income is cut in half. I always tend to avoid answers like these because they're absolutes. Okay, we don't know what each person experienced. We don't know if they got raises. Okay, we don't know if they went to a new job. So that's not something that we can really say for sure happened. Okay, B, consumers' incomes are doubled. Okay, again, we don't know if they got a raise. I mean, we would hope, since the average of the market basket doubled, but chances are they didn't. Okay. So C, we know, is correct. The prices in an average consumer's market basket are doubled. Okay. So that's not really an absolute. It's just the market basket has doubled. Okay. D, all consumer prices are doubled. Again, that's one of those absolutes. And we can't really conclude that because we don't calculate every single thing in the market basket. Okay. And E is kind of the same thing. We don't see the price for everything. I always use the example, and I used it this year. Like when there's inflation, a lot of luxury items, the price will actually fall. And I know we talked about cruises in my classroom because a 3-day, 2-night cruise was less than $100 to the Bahamas. Normally that would be, $250, $300 at a minimum. But because nobody's going on cruises, because they're worried about the economy, demand for cruises has fallen. Okay, so we can't really assume that all in this question. Okay, so feel free to change your answer if you want to. We don't require it, but it might be helpful in the takeaway. Okay, and then once I change the slide, of course, you can't answer, or you can't change your answer. Okay, so movement stopped. So let's look at inflation and wages. Okay, and again, if you have a job, this is really where you need to pay attention. Okay, so your nominal wage is what's on your paycheck. We already talked a little bit about that. Okay, that's what you get. That's the dollar amount that hits your bank account if you have direct deposit set up. Okay, your real wage is adjusted for inflation. That's what you can actually buy with that money. Okay, and then we have an equation that we can use that makes this really, really easy. Okay, this is called the Fisher's equation, and it is nominal equals real plus expected inflation. Okay, so on our example, you get a 5% raise this year, prices rise 6% this year. What happened to your real wage? So what happened to your purchasing power? Okay, and you can go ahead and answer in the Pear Deck. Okay, and we do add comments to the Pear Deck, but I do apologize. We may not comment on yours. We comment on as many as we can. Okay, I'll give everybody a few more seconds. Okay, let's go ahead and look at some answers. Looks like we're pretty good on this. Now, I will say on these, I love that y'all are recognizing, your purchasing power decrease, real wage decrease, but you've got to add in that number. Okay, that number just makes it very, very clear to the scorer, like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. And that's really all we need to know. Okay, so this first one, 1% decrease in real wages, absolutely. Okay, your real wage decreases by 1%. That's acceptable as well. Okay, I love this answer with all the math. If you don't have, like, you don't like math, okay, I always get kids that are like, I hate math. And then they can, say this is a math class. This is really easy math. You just plug in your numbers. Okay, so we have our nominal, which is at 5%. And then our real is our variable. We don't know what happened. So they put in an X here, which is great, plus 6%. And then you have to subtract 6 from each side, and you wind up with your real wage is negative 1%. Now, the only thing I would change about this answer, I love that the work is shown, but I would say your real wage decreased by 1%. Okay, so something like this next answer starts with decrease by 1%. Okay, That's the only thing I would change about that. I love that you showed your work though. Okay, so I'll give you a second to change your answer if you need to. Okay, so a few people typing. Okay, so let's try one on our own without the formula in front of us. Okay, your boss rewards your hard work by giving you a 3% pay raise. However, prices this year increased by 2%. What happened to your real wage? Y'all were quick on that one. Okay, I'll give everybody a few more seconds to finish up. Okay, let's look at a few responses. Looks like we're pretty good on this though. Okay. So this first one, the real wage increases by about 1%. I love that you added in the actual math for that. Okay. And then the second one is acceptable as well. Real wage increased by 1%. Okay. So you gained 1% purchasing power with this raise. And that's always a good thing, right? We like raises that actually are worth something. Okay. All right, so if you need to change your answer, I'll give you a few seconds to do that, and then we'll move on to a practice multiple choice question. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, and this one's a little bit tougher. Okay, so we've really got to think about that percent change formula here. So if a worker's nominal wage increases from $10 to $12 per hour, and at the same time, the general price level increases by 10%, the worker's real wage has. Okay, I'll give you a second to work through that one. Okay, I'll give you another 30 seconds or so. Okay, and even if you're confused on the calculations, just do your best and then we can always change your answer after. All right, so let's go on ahead and work through this. And I'll walk you through like what I would do if I was actually taking this and this question popped up. Okay, so I know the nominal wage increased from $10 to $12 per hour. I can use my percent change formula to figure out the percent change so that I'm comparing the nominal wage to the price level on the same playing field. Like you're comparing apples to apples instead of apples to oranges is how I like to put it. Okay, so we're gonna have 12 new minus old. Okay, and math people, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna add the parentheses. Okay, so 12 minus 10 divided by 10, I will add one set of parentheses. Okay, times 100. Okay, so what I'm gonna wind up with is 2 divided by 10 times 100. Okay, and I know that 2 over 10 is 1/5, which is 20%. So I'll be 0.2 times 100, which is 20%. Okay, so nominal wages have increased by 20%. Okay, but the price level has changed. So my nominal, now we're going to go to Fisher's. Okay, my nominal is equal to real plus inflation. Okay, and if I fill all of that out, and I know inflation is 10%, then my real has to be equal to 10% because 10 plus 10 is 20. Okay, and I see some of you already changing your answers. Okay, so the correct answer is C. Okay, because the wage didn't decrease. Okay, people probably aren't going to take a pay cut willingly. So, that $10 to $12 an hour is more realistic. Did not decrease by 20% because inflation wasn't 30%. Okay, of course, we know C is right. D, we know because we're, budding economists that we have to take inflation into account. So we didn't really get 20%. Okay, but we do know that it did change. Okay, and I know some of my students have experienced this. I had one, I've never had anybody make this much money. He was making $15 an hour because he kept getting raises because of inflation, because inflation was so high this year. And I don't normally see that in high school. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. Okay. This one's always fun, and I'm not saying don't let your friends borrow money. Okay. But let's say that you lent a friend $100 and he's paying you back in a year. Okay. Ella Grace will come right back to your question. Okay. So if you lend a friend $100 and he promises to pay you back in a year and you don't charge him interest, you've lost purchasing power. Okay. Now, normal year, you might lose 1 to 2%. This year, you would have lost 8%. I think the latest number was 8.2%. Okay, so the purchasing power of that $100 would have been $92, which is a little bit more of an issue. Okay, so you need to charge him interest. Okay, so you're going to charge him 3% just for borrowing your money. And the expected inflation is 5%. So you should charge him about 8% interest if you want to make a little bit of money for not having that money. Okay, and then you also want to meet inflation. And that's where we can look back at the Fisher's equation again. Okay, and this is what banks and real estate companies, mortgage companies do. Okay, they estimate what inflation will be, and then they tack on an extra couple of percentage points. Okay. All right, before we move on to the next slide, I want to address a question that was in the chat. Looks like Mr. Gillespie did as well. Okay, but yeah, if it says calculate, you have to show your work. They have been really good about putting show your work in the question and underlining it. But I always tell my kids, just show your work if it's a math problem. Okay, it's going to help you catch mistakes before they happen. And B, it's going to ensure that you get that point if one of the stipulations is you do show your work. And for some reason, they missed writing that in. Okay, because the people that write the test are human too, and mistakes do happen. Okay, so just make sure if it's mathy, show your work. Okay. All right. And one other thing on this one before we move to our extra scenario, guys, as borrowers, which you will probably be in the next couple of years, you want a low interest rate. Okay, you don't want to pay a lot of interest because that means you're paying essentially a higher opportunity cost. Okay, and if you're lending money, you want a high interest rate because you want to make money back plus some. Okay, all right. So we're going to look at what could happen with this scenario. Okay, if 5% inflation happens, what we thought, what we expected, the purchasing power is the same whenever you get it back. Okay, 1% inflation, you actually made a little extra money. Okay, you got the same dollar amount back, but now it will purchase more. Okay, if there's 8% inflation, then you lost. You were hurt because there was 3% extra inflation, and your friend benefits because he's paying you back with dollars that have less purchasing power. Okay, they're not worth less, they just have less purchasing power. Okay, any questions on those? Okay. All right, so this is like the saving grace of T-charts whenever we're talking about inflation. Okay, over here on the left, we have who is helped by unanticipated inflation. And what that means is the real value of the money is less whenever we're repaying our loans. Okay, so I'll give you a very quick example. Whenever interest rates were extremely low, I basically borrowed money against our house because I was buying a car. I'm not saying do that, not necessarily a smart financial move, but the interest rate was 2.75 versus a car loan being like 4 to 5%. Okay. So I borrowed money, it was approximately a year and a half ago at 2.75%. The bank was not planning on inflation being 8.2%. Okay. So the dollars that I'm paying them back have less real value than what they did whenever they deposited that money into my account. Okay, so that's helped by unanticipated inflation. Hurt by unanticipated inflation are lenders, people with fixed income. Typically, we think of them as retirees and savers. Okay, so what that means is like the bank that I borrowed money from, those dollars that they're getting back have less real value. Okay, that's a good for me, bad for them because they don't have as much purchasing power. Okay, people with fixed incomes typically don't get raises very often. And if they do, they may not match inflation. So they're not able to buy as much stuff. Their dollar doesn't go as far. Okay, and savers, especially people that just, stick their money under their mattress, are extremely hurt because no savings account will keep up with inflation. Okay, that's why we don't put retirement in savings account. Okay, because we want it to make inflation plus some back. Okay, all right. So I love these types of slides. You get to drag the dots to the correct scenario. Okay, so you're going to place a red dot next to the people who are hurt, a green dot next to the people who are helped.
Just a quick note on when you see that word fixed. Some of my students were unsure of what that meant. Fixed simply means that the rate will not change versus a variable rate will, of course, vary or change.
Yes. Yeah, and I always tell mine, like, guys, don't sign a variable rate loan. And of course, I mean, we always have a really good conversation with that. Like, credit cards are variable rates. They can change your rate. Okay. I know, like, one of my credit cards, it seems like the rate's changing every single day. And that's not really good for me. It's good for the credit card company, but it's not good for me. Okay. We still have little dots moving, so I'll give you another couple seconds. Okay, looks like we're kind of settling, so let's talk through these. All right, so Doug saved his money by putting it in a cookie jar. Okay, his cookie jar didn't pay him interest, so he is most definitely hurt. Okay, and a car is one of those things that, like, prices, I mean, if you've tried to buy a car in the last couple of years, prices are extremely high. Okay, so his cookie jar was definitely not helping him out there. Okay, Sally is hurt because her wage stays the same. It doesn't matter if there's 2%, 4%, 8% inflation, she's getting paid the same amount of money, meaning that her wage is not keeping up with inflation. Okay. That's why jobs with a cost of living adjustment are so highly sought. Okay. Alan is helped because he's paying that 2% fixed interest rate and the bank can't change that. So, like, if there's 10% inflation, then he's really helped because his dollars are not or do not have as much real value when he pays them back. Okay. So if you want to move your dots, you are welcome to. I know I'm seeing like 50 dots overlaid, so I can't really tell where everyone's at. Maybe I'll give you a second to move those. So we have hurt, helped. Okay, looks like we have settled. So let's look at the next slide. Okay, and this is one of my favorite type of multiple choice questions. Okay, so which of the following groups of people would benefit from unanticipated inflation? Okay, so who's going to benefit from that unexpected inflation? Okay, looks like we're kind of settled. I know I've got a few people that haven't answered. We're going to walk through how I work these problems and how I tell my students to work these problems. Okay, if I get a question like this, and this is a simpler one, okay, I'm not even going to look at the answer options until I do one thing. Okay, I want to find out who's going to benefit from unanticipated inflation. Okay, it's not savers. They're hurt by unanticipated inflation. Okay, so we're going to mark that answer option out. And that is the beauty of this exam. You can write all over your multiple choice booklet. Okay, as long as your answers on your answer sheet are correct. So if you don't mark this thing up, you are hurting yourself. Okay. All right. So savers are hurt. I know borrowers are helped and lenders are hurt. So I'm going to mark 3 out. All I'm left with is 2. So I know it's not A. I know it's not C. I know it's not D. I know it's not E. So all we're left with is B. Okay. And use that process of elimination. Okay, so the correct answer is B. I'll give you a minute to change your answer if you would like to. Okay, move on to the next slide. All right, so just a few definitions. Whenever we talk about inflation, there are certain kind of unseen costs almost. Okay, we have shoe leather cost. And what that means, and this is from like many, many years ago, where you actually had to go to the bank or the store more often. Okay, you wore out the shoe leather, like the leather on the bottom of your shoes, because inflation was so rapid. Okay, because you're running around town to make transactions, to get extra money out of the bank. I always think of, we looked at Venezuela, and like there were lines at ATMs and lines at banks because they wanted US dollars. They didn't want their currency anymore because inflation was so bad about 4 years ago that all they wanted was US dollars, and the bank was the only place to get them. And then their inflation was so bad, like you didn't know what you were paying from day to day at the store. So they were constantly making trips back and forth. Okay, that's shoe leather. You're wearing out the shoe leather going back and forth is how I think of it. Okay, menu cost, the cost of changing prices, literally. This can be physical or digital. And I don't know if any of y'all have noticed, but some stores have gone to digital price tags because they can just type in a computer and they're done. Okay, they don't have to pay somebody to come in and change the stickers on the shelves. And then a lot of restaurants have gone to QR code menus because those can be changed very quick and very cheaply. Okay, most places like Walmart and Dollar General pay a third party if they have a lot of price changes. I actually used to work that job. I'd go in the store and move everything and change price tags. Okay, and I was a menu cost to those stores because they had to pay me to come in and just change those tags out. Okay, the unit of account cost. Businesses have trouble anticipating price changes if there's a lot of inflation. Okay, and I think of like right now. Okay, I had to have, we did a fundraiser for bundt cakes, and I had to have my order in today so that a couple of things, they could make sure they could get everything. And I was able to like tie in the cost right now because I noticed on the invoice I got from them, they're fixing to start charging more. Okay, so businesses don't know what to charge if there's a lot of inflation all the time. Okay. All right, so we're going to use our dots again, and you're going to place the red dot next to the shoe leather cost, the green dot next to the menu cost, and a blue dot next to the unit of account cost. There's so many colors moving on my screen right now. It looks like I've got about 15 of you that have not responded, so I'll give you a few more seconds. We're actually running a little bit ahead, so we are in good shape. It looks like we've kind of settled. We've got one green dot still dancing, but we'll go ahead and talk through these. Okay, Dylan works at the grocery store and they're paying him to replace the price stickers on the shelf. So that is a menu cost. Okay, so that's kind of like what I used to do. They paid me to come in and change those price stickers instead of to come in and stock because that's what I had to do. Okay, Maggie goes to the bank every day to convert her money to a more stable currency like the US dollar. That is shoe leather. Okay, so think she's wearing the bottom of her shoes off running back and forth to the bank. Okay, so that's shoe leather. All right, and then Chris is unit of account cost. He's the owner of a business, but he doesn't know how much his ingredients are going to be next month. Okay, and because of that, he's having a hard time planning. He doesn't know what his dollars are going to be worth next month. Okay, so feel free to change your answer if you need to. It's going to be green, red, and then blue. Okay, looks like we are done moving. Okay, so the next couple of slides, we're going to work in old FRQ. Now, this doesn't have show your work. Okay, and I know it's a little bit harder to type this out than it is to just write it. But if you can, please show your work and your response. So that way, if you're struggling, we can kind of see where that's at. If you don't have all the parentheses, that's fine. I understand. I am seeing a lot of good answers. Y'all are doing a great job showing your work, like much better than I would probably do. All right, let's look at a few answers. All right, so this first one, you did a wonderful job showing your work. So we have our first set, I guess. Okay, we have our year 2 minus our year 1 divided by year 1 times 100. And then they went and they broke it down even further, step by step. That's always helpful. It could help you catch a mistake by working it out step by step versus just typing it into the calculator. Okay, and they did get the answer right in that inflation is 20%. Okay, and then this one, same thing. You didn't go step by step, but that's fine. They don't require that. You only have to put the starting point. Okay, correct answer, 20%. And same thing here. The only thing I would change about this bottom answer is I would put 20%. Okay, I would put like 20% increase just to make it very, very clear. Okay, remember your job is to tell the scorer, hey, I know what I'm doing. Okay, and it looks like most of you do. So take a minute to kind of brag about yourselves. Okay, and then we have stepping through the problem here. Okay, are there any questions on calculating inflation rates? No? Okay. Let's go ahead and look at the next part. Okay, sorry, that went too far. Assume that next year's wage rate will be 10% higher than this year's because of inflationary expectations. The actual inflation rate is 15%. At the beginning of next year, will the real wage be higher, lower, or the same as today? Mhm. Okay, we're going to go ahead and look at a few answers. Right. And one thing I do want to note about this question, it did not say explain. Okay. I saw a lot of you explaining, and that's fine as long as you don't contradict yourself. Okay. They are doing something a little bit different. If you contradict yourself in your answer, you will lose the point. So a question like this that just says higher, lower, or the same as today, you can just respond higher, lower, or the same. Okay. I love seeing all the work. I love seeing the thought process, but I did want to let you know that. Okay. So on this one, we're going to start down here at the bottom. We have lower, the real wage will be lower. Both of those would receive the point. Okay, it will be lower because the inflation rate exceeds the real wage increase by 5%. Get the point. Okay, this one, I love seeing the thought process and the working it out. The real wage will be 5% lower at the beginning of the year. Okay, and same thing here. All right, so any of those would be right, but I would say if you don't have to explain, don't explain, simply because you could explain yourself out of the point. I have seen and read questions like that. Okay. And I always tell my students, use the KISS method, keep it stupid simple for the score. Okay. They just want your answer. They want to know that you know what you're talking about, and that is it. Okay. So then we have an answer here. Okay. Any questions there? Okay, and one thing I do love about these types of free response questions, because it doesn't say explain, if you were just completely confused and you had no clue what this was talking about, you can just pick one of these, higher, lower, or the same as today, and you have a 33% chance of getting it right. Okay, so pick one even if you're not sure, but hopefully you're sure by May. Okay. All right, and then let's look at one last part of this FRQ. Okay, assume that Caitlin gets a fixed rate loan from a bank when the expected inflation rate is 10%. If the actual inflation rate turns out to be 15%, who benefits from the unexpected inflation? Caitlin, the bank, neither, or both? And this one does say explain. Okay, guys, make sure you are explaining. I see a lot of correct answers, but without that explanation, you wouldn't get the point. Okay, and I see some of you have seen the non-adapted version of this. This one is asking about Caitlin, not Sarah. Okay, I'll give everybody a few more seconds and then we'll wrap up. Okay, we had a really good question on Pear Deck that I want to address before we look at the actual answers. Someone asked, do we assume that if the question involves a fixed rate loan that the borrower benefits? Okay, that is true if inflation occurs. If there's deflation, the borrower would actually be hurt because those dollars that they're paying back have more purchasing power. Okay, and if there's no inflation at all, then neither one's really helped or hurt, depending on what the expected inflation rate is. Okay, so if there's no inflation and the bank has 3% inflation built into their loan, then the bank would be helped. Okay, and typically that's how banks are going to work. I don't think you will see a question like that. I have seen deflation and inflation, but never just 0% inflation. Okay, I'm not going to say I've looked at every single question, but I've looked at quite a few. All right, so let's look at a few answers. Okay, so all of these are excellent answers. And I know I commented on some, but it's hard to keep up with y'all. Y'all are on a roll tonight. All right, so Caitlin benefits from the inflation because inflation exceeds the expected loan rate by 5%, which means that the money Caitlin uses to pay back the bank has 5% less purchasing power. Okay, I love that, less purchasing power. We always try to use our economic vocabulary, and that is one of those biggies, like you'll see at least once. All right. Same thing on the second answer. Caitlin will benefit because the money that she will repay will have 5% less purchasing power than the amount that she borrowed. Absolutely. Okay. Caitlin, because she is the borrower, she gives back less real value for the money she initially borrowed from the bank. That answer is correct as well. As I was scrolling through the questions, I didn't see anybody say this, but I have seen it and I had to take points one year for it. Okay. Don't say the money is worth less, or don't say she has to pay back less money. The dollar amount is still the same. It just won't buy as much. Okay. So always use like real value or purchasing power when you're answering a question like this. Okay. Do we have any questions before we wrap up? We're a few minutes early, but I didn't think anybody would complain about that. Okay. But now is the perfect time to ask a question if you have one. If you have any questions about the CPI or the market basket, I'm happy to answer those as well. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put the survey up. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to stay on. You can unmute yourself or type them directly in the chat. Okay. The survey link is on your Pear Deck screen. That link should be live for you. Okay. I know we've had some struggles in the past. but it should be live. If you cannot click on it, please let one of us know and we can post it in the chat. Okay. And once you finish that survey, you are free to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. I know it's already dark outside, unfortunately. Okay, and I should have said this earlier. I know at least one teacher in here, but if you are a teacher at another school and I did not get to meet you at the AP conference, I'm sorry, but could you please comment in the chat like, hey, my name is, I'm a teacher at, so that we can record your attendance as well. Okay. All right, Tristan, these are kind of the tutoring or practice sessions. You can always talk to your teacher, and I know, I apologize, I don't have the website. There are some ways out there to get tutoring. Let me see if I can find the website really quickly. And it's all digital. Varsity Tutors. I hate to refer you to a website that I'm not 100% sure about, but there is Varsity Tutors and wiseant.com. I don't know about that one either, but Wiseant, at least, like, they do require that you have some credentials. I do know that. Yeah, that's the majority of what I'm seeing. Miss Weller, if you know of any others.
Outside of like just coming and talking to your teacher, it's a little bit tough. We're going to offer these sessions again in the spring, but we're going to be progressing through the material. So AP Classroom is a good one because you can go check out those daily videos. It's not going to necessarily give you the type of feedback a tutor would, but it's somebody saying it in a different way that may click with your brain. Jacob Reed is another good resource, as is Jacob Clifford. So there's a lot as far as YouTube videos and videos that are out there. As far as actual one-on-one tutoring, I don't know any. I also pulled up some stuff and it looks like there's some like in the Bay Area and whatnot, but I think your search idea is as good as ours is.
I know tutors
But
are expensive too.
they really are.
Yeah.
$50 an hour? Goodness.
Now, I will tell you, I'm not sure where you're from, but I am sure that your teacher would be happy to work with you. I know, like, my students are off of the A+ program, but we're going to go through these same study sessions in the spring, and then I'll offer more. Just talk to your teacher, and I'm sure that they would really welcome you with open arms. I love it when my kids come to me and they're like, I don't understand this. Can we sit down? Okay, so ask them and see what they say. And I'll see if I can find anything else. But I don't know of anything right now, except like Varsity Tutors and wiseant.com. And I said they're expensive. I think the cheapest was like $20 an hour.
The other option would be to talk to a classmate
Yeah.
who may be understanding this, because I mean, shoot, classmates are a lot cheaper than some of these tutoring sessions. And it builds you a skill set then for college to where you know how to find people that understand things better than you and build a study group.
Yes.
Addison, yes, your Pear Deck takeaways will be emailed to you.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end so that way they'll start publishing because they do take a little bit. And then the survey should be up there. Okay, Tristan, I know where you're at. Yeah, talk to him. I don't think he would care to help you. You know, I would love to say that I would be happy to help, but I don't know what my schedule looks like either. You know, you can email him and have him reach out to one of us if you want to. I know, like, I don't do videos, but both of the Jacobs that Miss Weller was talking about, they do videos. And I'm gonna put it in the chat. Reviewecon.com is phenomenal. There are games, videos, reading sections, and he's pretty good. He is a reader. I think he goes to the reading almost every year. And then Jacob Clifford is very entertaining. He does move very, very fast. So you might need to slow the YouTube videos down just a little bit. You're welcome. I'm sorry we couldn't be more help. All right, DJ Harrison, do y'all have any questions? The Pear Deck should be generating, so hopefully they'll get them soon.
Besides Barb, did you see any other teachers here?
I did not.
Okay, because I have her down.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Let me add Rhonda to my Pear Decks.
And we had like what, 52, 53 kids?
Something like that. It was quite a few.
Yeah.
So we had a lot actually participating in the Pear Deck.
Did you catch the schools that were present?
No, hold on, I can go back to that.
Okay.
Okay. Harrison, if you don't have any questions, I might have to put you in the waiting room. Okay, so that way we can finish up all of our stuff. All right, let me stop the recording. I'm glad I remembered to press record though.